Neil, the Haitian sensation Magny, who is back in action on the 25th of June, where he takes on Shavkat Rakhmonov, the great new white hope. Neil, great to sit down and chat. How are things with you today?
I'm doing great. Life is going very well. I have nothing to complain about at this point.
I've got to ask first and foremost, a bit of a strange way to start an interview with an MMA fighter, but how is Dominic Magny, your newborn baby?
He's doing great. I mean, he was blessed with the Magny lungs, so even though he was 6 months premature, I'm sorry, 6 weeks premature.
6 months premature. Well, I nearly had a heart attack myself then, Neil.
6 weeks. 6 weeks premature. He didn't have to get oxygen or anything like that. They just kept him in the hospital for a couple of days to kind of manage his weight, get his weight up, and that kind of thing. So he's back at home now, doing well. So all good's over here with that.
Fantastic. Well, fantastic to hear, because family is, of course, the most important thing. So good to hear on that end. But let's turn to the fight at hand. You're facing Shavkat Rakhmonov, as I mentioned, in just over 2 weeks' time. First and foremost, is Shavkat an easier or more difficult task than the other undefeated guy you were after, Khamzat Chimaev?
No, not at all. I mean, both these gentlemen are undefeated. They all have impressive win streaks in UFC right now. Shavkat has actually fought more tougher opponents until most recently, where Chimaev had fought Burton. So not at all am I thinking this is an easier fight, quote unquote, but excuse me. Both guys have different skill sets that they bring to the table and different things they do very well. This is by no means any easy fight for me, but I definitely think I'm gonna go out there and get it done for sure.
Look, we hear in this sport a lot of the time, I'll fight anyone, any place, anywhere. But this campaign that you've been on of wanting to fight the young killers and then eventually getting the Rakhmonov fight shows you Neil Magny, is about that statement. But what is the biggest upside for you in a potential victory over Shavkat? What is kind of the upside post victory for this one?
The upside is I'm still going to do what I love against the best guys out there. I mean, there's going to come a day where these young guys get a hold of me and I can't keep up with them. That day hasn't come yet. So for me to go out there, test myself against the best guys in the division, old or young, is what I'm more so excited about. So to go out there against a guy who's literally 8 years younger than me, go out there and school the dude, that's very motivating in itself. I'm like, all right, cool. I still got it. The soul dog got some tricks up his sleeves. So for me, that's like the biggest motivating factor out there. Just go out there and show everyone that I'm still able to compete with the best of them, regardless of age.
Yeah, of course. I guess what I meant by that question was more kind of from a rankings perspective, because this kind of, I would say, probably post Chiesa fight, you've been on this crusade of guys wanting to take your top 10 spot and kind of batting them away from the upper end of the welterweight division. So you're in number 8, Shavkat's number 15. If he gets the win over you, he takes your pace. So what is it to gain from kind of a positional strength of the welterweight division?
So for me, it's just chasing that performance that give me a better matchup. Like my last fight against beat Mike Griffin, but like it was like, oh cool, it was a good fight, but it wasn't a fight that had people talking on Monday morning. So for me to get the stage set, go out here and fight a guy like Shavkat, I feel like this is the fight I can go out there and really make a statement and really get that top 5 opponent next. A lot of these guys who are sitting in the top 5 are kind of like playing this game where they're only winning to fight one another, or they're finna get entitled to a title shot. Who knows what it may be? I don't know who the next person in the fight for a title is. I don't know when it's gonna happen. The best I can do is get my ducks in a row, so to speak, and make sure I'm one of the guys that's in that conversation. So if it means beating the number 15 guy, the number 14 guy, number 13 guy, all the way up to number 5 guy, then screw it, I'll do that. But I'm not gonna sit around and wait for the opportunity to go out there and create as many opportunities as I can.
100%. What does Shavkat Rakhmonov do well for you, and what are potential weaknesses, or maybe not weaknesses, but certainly things that you think? I'm not asking you to give away your game plan, but what are little things you think that you could potentially exploit?
Yeah, I mean, at this point, it's no brainer. I mean, I'm 30 fights in the UFC, so it's like we're waiting to say, oh, what's gonna be new in this fight? Like, I mean, it's absolutely no brainer. I mean, the guy's very skilled in striking, and definitely his grappling is a strong suit. But at the end of the day, like, the difficulty is going to be what can these guys do in later rounds? Like, go out there and just drown these guys with the conditioning. It's something I've done time and time again, and there's been very few people who've been able to kind of keep up with that pace. So for me, it's absolutely no different going out against Shavkat. Like, I know the risk that he poses, I know the danger that brings to the table, but it's nothing I haven't seen before at this point. So for me, it's go out there and just pretty much put the beating on him early and just keep going until either the ref pulls me off or he quits. So one of the two.
You mentioned there as well 30 fights in the UFC. I know you first of all, I want to touch on the fact that you tied the great GSP's record for the most wins in your division. That's got to be a very proud moment when you hear that statistic to hold a record with what most people would argue is the GOAT of the sport. How does that feel?
Yeah, man, it feels great. I mean, it definitely lets you know you're doing the right things. I mean, to be able to compete this often in UFC and this long in UFC is a blessing in itself. So to be in the conversation with guys like GSP and Matt Hughes, that's definitely a great company to be with. I mean, with a lot of us, people get started in the sport a lot younger and a lot more opportunities to go out there. I'm sure that record is going to get broken time and time again, and the bar will be set higher and higher. Hopefully, I'll be the guy to hold the record for a while, but we'll see how these next couple of years play out for me.
Is GSP the GOAT, Neil Magny? Yes or no, is GSP the GOAT?
100%. GSP
Correct answer.
There's no doubt, there's no argument. GSP is the actual GOAT when it comes to the sport of mixed martial arts.
Can I ask why? Why do you hold him above the likes of Anderson Silva, the likes of John Jones, Demetrius Johnson? What does he do? What did he do to separate them guys?
So with GSP, it just comes down to the consistency. There was never an asterisk with anything that GSP did. Even with his losses, he came back and avenged those losses and did them in great fashion. But there was never an asterisk. There was never a situation where it was just like, GSP won this fight, but this came up, and therefore we have to take this win away. I mean, the guy was professional across the board in everything that he did, from how he carried himself outside the octagon, inside the octagon, and his work spoke for itself. So in my eyes, he's definitely one of the greatest of all time in the sports of mixed martial arts.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. I wanted to mention there because, as I mentioned, 30 fights in the UFC now. And I think people are so accustomed to your style. We know what you do well, that lovely boxing style, specifically the jab, your pressure, as you mentioned, and the cardio that you put on over 15 or indeed 25 minutes. How much at this stage of your career, how much do fight tactics change fight over fight, or is it more at this point just implementing what you do well on the individual opponent?
So that comes as a double-edged sword. I mean, the fact that I'm able to get so many fights in UFC, it's like, it's a great thing that I've been around for so long. The other side of it is like, wow, there's a lot of video on how I fight. So it's real easy for someone to mimic what I'm going to do and kind of anticipate what I'm going to do in the fight. So it kind of makes it more different for me going to the fight, because every opponent that I fight, they're not going in there necessarily like, oh, I'm going to do this against Neil Magny. They're already breaking down all the fights that they watched against me, and they're going to go out there and try to repeat some things that the guys have done in the past. I mean, so like my fight against Lorenz Larkin, there's been something that got exposed in there. My fights against the Southern guys, more so they got exposed there. So these guys are going back and watching this film, and they're trying to exploit those weaknesses that they've seen in the past in the fights against me. So what makes it difficult there is, as much film as I watch on them, they're watching more film on me to implement a different game plan on how to beat me. So I almost had to like be adaptable and be ready to change game plan mid-fight. My fight against Kevin Gaston, for example, I was fighting a guy who I had a significant reach advantage against. In my mind, I was going to go out there and just jab him to death. I was just going to beat him up from the outside the entire time. The very first jab I threw, I punched the top of his head. I break my hand, and I was like, well, there goes the jab. What do I do now? So I was forced to switch to more of a grappling-based style in that fight in order to be victorious against Kevin Gastelum. So, like I said, it's just a double-edged sword at this point, having so many fights where it's kind of easier for some guys to game plan against me, but it's more different to game plan against them because there's not as much film or things like that for me to study when it comes to them. Like even like Shavkat, for example, though he has 3 fights in UFC, I think I have 7 fights total of film time to watch on him, where he probably has 3 hours of film time to watch on me. Like, you know what I mean? So it's it definitely makes preparation a little bit more difficult. That being the case.
If you were a coach who was coaching a fighter who was about to fight Neil Magny, what fight would you focus on? I don't necessarily mean a defeat, but I mean, what is kind of in your head the high point of your career where you were at your best, and a coach would go, that's Neil Magny at his best, that's what we need to prepare for?
The difficult thing is that, and I think that's the thing that makes it difficult for me to prepare for at the end of the day is like, though there's a lot of film on me, like whether I win or lose the fight, I'm right back in the gym working on things that I need to do better. So like if you watch him over my career, or whatever, my first loss in UFC was to Sergio Moraes. He beat me with the Maori Triangle. Years later, I got to fight Damian Maia. Damian Maia attempted the same exact Maori Triangle, and probably one of the best grapplers in the sport of MMA. He attempted the same Mounted Triangle, and I was able to defend it correctly against Dave Maia. Fast forward a few fights after that, I'm fighting Hector Lombard, and I actually was able to finish him using the Mounted Triangle. So it makes it very difficult to plan necessarily. Like, all right, he may do this, may do that, because as much as these guys are watching the film on me, I'm watching that film as well. I'm like, man, that I didn't like how that turned out. I need to do that part better. So I try to like bring different things to the table next fight. But at the end of the day, there's definitely some consistencies that still stick out.
Yeah, 100%. What are Shavkat's biggest strengths when you look at him? As you mentioned, there's not too much tape, a little bit in M1, but obviously only the 3 fights in the UFC, and then he's getting the opportunity against you. So what are kind of his strengths in a more kind of specific way? I know you mentioned he's a good grappler, but what do you see specifically of strengths?
Yeah, just the way he uses his grappling he uses it very well. I mean, he closes the distance pretty well with his grappling, and when the fight hits the ground, he's very active looking for a submission. He's not one of those guys that is kind of hold position, just kind of wait out and see what happens. He's constantly chasing a submission when he fights. So that's definitely one of the strengths that he has. So whether it's him standing before the takedown even happens, he's looking for submission. Once the fight hits the ground, he's looking for submission. So he's a very active grappler. He's not one of those guys who's kind of holds position and sees what happens. He's always looking for an opportunity to finish the fight with submission.
We talk about grapplers there, and it's something that I'd like to touch on because you mentioned about other guys perhaps above you in the welterweight division. I don't know if it was prior to the Griffin fight or after the Griffin fight, but I know you've spent some time recently with Sean Brady. What was the training sessions like with Sean Brady, and how do you position him in the likes of these prospects with Chimaev and Rakhmonov?
Oh man, Sean Brady's right there above all of those guys. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I actually met him when he was like years ago. He's like the CFFC champ at the time. I got to turn them way back then, and man, the guy's very good at what he does in his grappling. I mean, the pure strength that he brings to the table when it comes to grappling is like no other that I felt. I mean, I wrestled with guys and competed heavyweights. So for me to go against another welterweight, like, damn, this dude's pretty strong in the grappling. Definitely lets you know what's out there, so to speak. But that dude is just phenomenal when it comes to grappling. I mean, he beat Craig Jones in a grappling match. For him to completely shut down Craig Jones in grappling and then turn out to beat Ben Saunders a few weeks ago, his grappling is definitely top notch.
Yeah, 100%. It feels like that Daniel Gracie gym is. I think that they're undefeated in the UFC with 4 fighters. It seems like they've maybe turned a little bit of a corner. They're starting to get a little bit more respect. But was it you went down to Daniel Gracie's, or did Sean come up to your gym?
Yeah, I was down to Daniel Gracie's. I have family lives in Philadelphia, and I went down to Daniel Gracie's to train. Just 6 years ago now. Jeez, that time goes by quick. Like 6 years ago, I went down there to train. It's just a solid group of guys. I mean, the effort that the guys put on there, not just the guys in the mat, like the athletes, but the coaches. Marquez and Daniel Gracie have a special thing going where it's rare to see coaches feed off each other. Like, you know what I mean? Like a lot of times, you catch yourself where you can see coaches like some coaches want the spotlight more than the other, so to speak, where it's like, oh man, look at the work that I'm doing, look at the recognition that I deserve, kind of thing. And down there at Daniel Gracie Academy, like that's not the case at all. Like they know. Gary know he does well. Marquez know he does well, and those guys just go out there and like build a great team. And for a while, like Philly was like my hidden gem, quote unquote. Like, you know what I'm saying? I mean, I knew how talented the guys were out there, but now the world's getting to see just how talented that group out of Philadelphia is, and I'm happy for those guys.
When you end up in a room, Neil, I don't believe there's any other ranked welterweights in your gym, but when you end up in a room with another ranked welterweight, or even a top 10, top 20, top 25 in the world, you've got to be sizing them up a little bit, thinking potentially one day me and Brady could be in the cage. So is that a fight that you could potentially see happening? It's maybe not in the near future, but in the
I mean, that's one of the things that never really crosses your mind. Is like, crosses like I mean, it's like, oh man, what if UFC does this? But like, that's been a fight that's been offered before. Like, no, that's not a fight I want to take. You know what I mean? Like, for me, like, loyalty and that kind of thing means a lot more than just like, oh, I'm gonna fight this guy just because of rank, whatever. Like we find ourselves in a position where like one of us is champion. This is an absolute fight to make for a championship. Sure, you cross that bridge when the time comes, but until that day comes, if that day comes, like I'm gonna be his biggest supporter. Like, hey, if you want to go out there and become champ, dude, whatever it takes on my end to help you get there, I'll do it. Like, you know what I mean? I wish you the best. Hope you do get there, kind of thing. And then even like another option, like, hey, you know what? Maybe I go up to middleweight. Like, you know, that's been a thing that I've been considering for a bit now. So if that ends up being the case, maybe I make a decision like, all right, cool, you take over welterweight, I move to middleweight kind of thing. But like I said, it's just it's one of those things like it definitely plays in the back of my mind, like, oh, what if this does come about? How do we go about handling this thing? But it's something that I don't see happening in the near future or whatever. So I don't really put much effort or thought into it.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. I want to mention as well one of your other training partners, Curtis Blaydes, who is in a main event next month over on my shows in London against Tom Aspinall. I've got to ask, are you planning to come over and make the trip to watch your teammates fight in London?
Yeah, absolutely. So right now I may be committed to cornering another teammate, but that fight falls through, I'll 100% be out there to support Curtis.
Well, I had to ask because obviously I will be there, so it would be fantastic for us to meet up. But how do you see Blaydes Aspinall turning out? What do you make of that matchup?
I hate to be the guy to bring the bad news, but I think Curtis going out there just dominate, dude. Like Curtis is just on the chair right now, where he's at mentally and emotionally, and how it's linking up with him physically. He's just the best that I've seen in a really long time. So I expect him to go out there and just completely just take over this fight. Like, and I'm not just saying that he's a teammate of mine. It's just from seeing the sheer effort and work ethic that he's putting in these last couple of weeks, and I'm just excited to see him go out there and do it. Like he's in a really good place right now mentally, and I think he's going to really show in his next fight.
Well, look, I've interviewed Curtis and I've interviewed Tom, so I'm completely neutral regardless of nationalities and nothing like that. But I know the odds are very close too, so I don't think it's going to be any surprise if Curtis Blaydes silences the O2 in a way that Alex Volkov maybe couldn't against Aspinall. But if we turn the conversation back to your career and the fight at hand, what are your? I asked you this back in February prior to Griffin, but I'm going to ask you it again. What are your goals for the next 12 months, Neil? We're at the start of June now. What do you want to accomplish by the start of June 2020?
By the end of the year, I'm looking to get myself back in title contention. That is the 100% the goal for me. So whatever it takes to get there, I'm wanting to do. And it all starts for me on June 25th. Like this is a huge fight for me. A huge stage is set for me to go out there and show the UFC and show the fans why I deserve to fight a top-ranked opponent. So I'm gonna go out there and just earn that opportunity to do so.
Fantastic. Well, it was great to catch up as always. It was great when I saw the news this was booked. I think I remember messaging you saying taking on all comers or something like that because it was such a tantalising matchup that you're in. So thank you for your time and look forward to seeing you back in action.
Oh, no problem. It's a pleasure talking to you again.
Before we finish, Neil, how can people find you on social media and any sponsors you'd like to plug? The floor is yours for the last word.
Yeah, you guys can follow me on all social media platforms at Neil.
Neil, you've just accidentally muted yourself. There we go.
Well, that was Magny _170.